Rolling. Rolling.
Rolling on a river.
Whenever you are ready.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to an honour and a privilege of a watch collector episode. My name's Ollie. I've got my very dear friend Pietro Tomajer with me. Pietro, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ollie. I can't believe we're doing this today.
Neither can I. Whose idea was this?
I feel the pressure.
Today we're going to do a whistle-stop tour of a very special collection with Pietro Tomajer, the founder of the limited edition. And because it is a special edition of the Watch Collector, there is no obligatory wristwatch check, certainly for me, because all the focus is going to be on this gentleman. 10 years ago, he had the vision of founding the limited edition, which, as some of you may know now, I've become involved with, perhaps against mine or anyone else's better judgment, particularly in terms of the Watch Collector and all the episodes we've now shot. But all the support that we've gathered over the last couple of years of shooting these episodes really is all founded upon what Pietro started 10 years ago, back in 2015. And we get lots and lots of requests, particularly bearing in mind Pietro's stance within the sector as a whole. And in fact, you know, a GPHG jury member a couple of years or so ago. Because of his standing, we get requests to say, well, you know, show us your watch collection. So here we go. We're going to keep it short but sharp. Not a short, sharp watch collector, not 1 minute, but we could talk about this for hours. Pietro, tell us, how did the limited edition start? And talk to us about the very first collaboration and your piece in the collection.
Yes, so I have to admit, by looking at these two trays that we have in front of us, that there is a kind of a big synergy between what I can now call my watch collection and the journey that the limited edition has gone through. There are reasons that are obviously personal. I like watches for the emotional value that watches have. I have told the story, I got into watches through really my dad, who when I was a teenager and he managed to have some success, I remember at work, he would reward himself with a nice watch here and there. In a very humble environment, because you know, those were very, very special occasions that were happening quite rarely. But because they were so rare and so special, I remember the face of my dad, the light in his eyes, and I remember how he was explaining to me what watches really stood for him. I'm lucky enough to still have my dad with me, bless him, and I'm lucky enough to still kind of treasure and share this passion with him. My dad is not a big collector by any means, but every single watch that I've seen him acquiring, either for his own dad or because he bought for himself, had a big meaning for me across the years. So that's where it started in terms of me getting interested in watches. So as all of us, you know, I have had a few watches that I was lucky to acquire in the early days, let's say. But then when I had the brilliant idea to start with a limited edition, unfortunately, because the limited edition is still to this day and has always been an organic business that is privately owned and is completely self-sustained, I had to put my money where my vision was at the time, and unfortunately I had to sacrifice some of the early pieces that I had acquired. I remember a couple of Breguet, a couple of Graham watches, all pieces that were meaningful to me at the time. So the legend goes that I had to start the limited edition without a watch collection, besides some family pieces that I still hold very dear to myself, like a Breguet GP 7000, a Vacheron Constantin Patrimony, for example. But yeah, as I rebuilt my collection, this has been the journey, and it kind of, it's quite humbling to see now laid out in front of us.
Watch curation is so idiosyncratic and particular to the individual that there's no right or wrong answer. There are so many videos out there of, you know, what's the perfect 3-watch collection or perfect 5-watch collection. There is no perfect 3 or 5-watch collection. It's whatever you want, and that could be 5 divers, it could be 5 dress watches, it could be square, round, just doesn't matter. And I think that's probably one of the beauties of this hobby that we love so dearly, that there are almost limitless options, and the design and creativity, particularly when it comes to the independence, is almost limitless. If I may.
Of course.
The iconic shape of the Corum bubble. Tell us about this. That's
kind of historically relevant, and looking at that watch now feels absolutely out of time in a way, because it's a huge watch in dimensions by any means. I think it's a 46 mil case, and it must be something like 14-15 millimeters thick. And at the time when I started the limited edition, I would say the trend, I hate the word trend, and I try not to stick to trends in any possible way, but I used to like big watches in those days, because actually as I was getting older and my eyesight was getting dodgy, actually there is a point in having a big watch that makes you enjoy the watch in the finest details. So I remember this was the first limited edition that we launched with my co-founder at the time, Jassim, that I actually take the opportunity to mention and to thank again for believing in the vision at the time. And Jassim, being based in Qatar, the first edition that we did was on a lovely purple that is one of my favorite colors for watches. This was called the Qatar Legacy, and we made it in a 50 pieces limited edition on the Corum bubble, which is this kind of postmodern shape and configuration of a Corum watch. Corum now has been a bit forgotten to some extent, but in the 50s and in the 60s were one of the first independent brands that were actually daring to experiment in both shapes, looks, colors, and also mechanics in so many ways. If you think that then they launched, for example, the Golden Bridge, just to mention one, and the bubble came out, I think it was the year 2000, and it was launched as a postmodern design that had a lot of success. So this was the early days. So I kept one, of course, as a reminder of the first official collaboration that we've launched.
And it's amazing, isn't it? Because you're right, no one ever really talks about Corum anymore. And unfairly so, because whether it's in terms of the design of this case, instantly recognizable, which very, very few manufacturers are able to actually do. In fact, if it didn't have Corum on the sapphire crystal, then you'd still know instantly it's a bubble. And as you say, the Calabrese Golden Bridge is just an amazing piece of engineering and design. Okay, so that's the.
This is a nightmare to photograph, actually, as our film director Chris, that you don't see behind the scenes here, will confirm.
But you're right, the trend, and you'll see as we go through all the watches, actually the sizes change quite considerably. You know, you kind of expand and contract, and again it goes back to that thing of, well, you know, it should we really be talking about a trend? Should we really be so worried about, oh, what's in trend right now? Is it not more the fact that actually that's just what you enjoy wearing?
Yeah, and I think we are lucky, Oliver, you and I, because I think we have very similar wrist shape, which comes into play when you're thinking that I feel I'm equally at ease with a big watch and with a small watch, because my wrist is more or less 18 centimeters, which seems to be the right size to just play around and not being constrained by trends, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, because as you know, now we're in 2025 and there is a contraction in terms of size in the market.
Oh, yeah.
More and more brands are moving to actually less than 40 mil for the men's watches. And of course, you know, as in any market, there will be an expansion again at some point. Give it another 10 years and it'll probably move north of 40 again.
I like to say that 40 to 43 is my soft spot, I would like to say. So when we go to 36, 34, 35, 38, I do appreciate, but it's probably not my preference.
So you mentioned in terms of having purple on the dial of the Corum bubble as one of your favourite colours for watches. Here we go straight into another with, I should say, one of my favourite brands, if not only for many things, but if not only for the number of options they have at such a competitive price point. Tell us a bit about this one.
Yeah, so Sartory Billard, of course, the French watchmaker. Armin is a friend, and he introduced a little bit attainable bespoke watchmaking at price levels that were just not available at the time. And I remember I discovered about them and what they were doing because of this watch. Now, this watch was designed by our friend Amr Cindy, the Horophile. And the Horophile has iconically been one of the ambassadors of the use of purple in watches, which, believe me, was not very popular, nearly 10 years ago when this was launched. Before, at that time, it was blue, and the market was kind of showing a bit of green. Prior to that, only 5 years before, it was unheard for luxury brands to use colors at all. I remember when Breitling, when Tag Heuer, so some of the mainstream brands started to use yellow and orange and red. It was quite a big thing. Anyway, this was a family and friends edition. In fact, there is an engraving at the back that highlights the family and friend nature of this timepiece that my friend Amr and my friend Armand agreed to allocate to me at the time. And it was again at the beginning of the limited edition when we started to talk about bespoke, attainable timepieces. So this was great. I think at that time it was like 2,000 euros for a piece that is full titanium, with a lovely titanium dial as well.
And what's the finishing on the case?
So it's a matte, it's a blasted finishing on all across which is something that you can find in Amr's design language, and we will obviously talk about some other editions later on.
No, it's even the collaboration and usage, I should say, of this kind of really textured, rugged brown leather strap with the purple actually works really well, particularly against the sandblasted nature of the.
And you can notice that I do wear my watches, so I'm one of those. Actually, I struggle to define myself a collector. If I own a watch, I wear it, and I rather than just collect. I'm a user.
A user.
Yeah.
Well, I think certainly I absolutely. Well, what else is it for, frankly? They're there to be enjoyed. It's the same as cars, same as bikes. If you're going to have these wonderful things, then, in my view, then you should be using them and wearing them. Next up, if I may say, is my personal favourite of all the collaborations and colour combinations of Armin Strom for their equal gravity. Tell us about this one.
Yes, so this was a big leap of faith for us. 5 years down the line with the limited edition, we decided to celebrate our 5th anniversary, and Armin Strom believed in us and believed in creating a limited edition of only 10 pieces, 5 with golden bridges as you see here, and 5 with rhodium bridges. And basically it is a bespoke version of the gravity equal force system 78, which is a grey movement that Armin Strom launched in 2018, I think, first time, and which provides with constant force. Again, at the time, it was priced at a very, very good value for money price point. This is the top end version of the time with the bridges in gold. I loved everything about it. We kind of, obviously, there was our input in designing this specific version. But just in mixing a little bit the gold tones with the rhodium finished part and the stainless steel case, I love it. I love it as well, and I think the result was amazing.
I'm a sucker for black, rose gold, and steel. It's just an amazing color combination. And for those that don't know about Armin Strom, and particularly the constant equal force, the whole idea of it is. In terms of the usage of the barrel, they only use 9 out of 12.5 turns on the barrel. And so what that does is it allows a much more regular metering out of power towards the mainspring. The mainspring isn't overused, it stays within its optimum range, and that in turn makes sure that power delivery is smooth to the rest of the movement, so that it basically it keeps better time. And they call it a stop work movement as part of their own creation for these pieces. So that's what Armin Strom really kind of specialise in, and that is the quality of their timekeeping. And if you've seen any of my other videos on Armin Strom, you'll know that I'm a massive fan of their resonance, which is an incredible piece. Moving on. Kudoke.
Yes, so this was a labor of love in the best meaning of the expression, in the sense that when we talk about German watchmaking, and when we decided with the limited edition to open the door to watchmaking that came from all over the world, as opposed to being limited to talking about Swiss watchmaking. Obviously, German watchmaking came about as one of the most important, how can I say, schools of watchmaking. Studying and exchanging with Stefan Kudoke, we understood to the full extent how much British watchmaking was influential for German watchmakers, and still is. Stefan Kudoke is passionate about the work of Mudge, for example, one of the classic watchmakers, and other classic watchmakers from the UK. So we decided and tried to encapsulate all of this, which is a real story, into a timepiece that is. It features some of the classic British finishing, like frosting on the dial, engraving at the back. It was the first K2 ever done with the brushed sides of the case, as you can see here. So it's a watch that wants to tell a story of the connection between British and German watchmaking, Saxonian watchmaking, if you like. And it was a huge success, and it's one of those that I wear very, very regularly, as you can tell from the strap. And it's one that makes me happy every time I wear it.
There are a couple of pieces here that I identify all of these with Pietro because he does genuinely wear them, but there are a couple in particular that I automatically associate with Pietro. This is certainly one of them. I'm a massive sucker for multiple steps on a bezel. I think it creates this illusion of delicacy. It's really beautifully finished, and also some of you may or may not know that on some of these pieces there's an extra special hint to show that it is in fact a special collaboration with the limited edition. Can you give us a clue as to what that is?
Yeah, so I don't know if you that you're watching agree, and what Ollie, your standpoint is on this, but I'm not a big fan of shouting collaborations. So when there is a collaboration between a retailer and a watchmaker, and you can see the names of both all over, on the case back, on the dial, you name it. I think the value is really in how genuine the story is, rather than the name of the people that have engineered or have portrayed the story. So for the limited edition, normally when it's a collaboration, there's only a little star that symbolizes the limited edition that is placed strategically. In this case, it's placed here as the indicator of the 24 hours indicator. So you'll find that as the 24 hours spins across the dial, there is one tiny little star that represents the limited edition and would give you the 24 hours indication and basically the day and night with it. So we've done that nearly in all our limited editions. We try to have a sober presence, but then when we tell the story, we tell it fully.
Personally, that subtle nod I think is far more effective than, as you say, emblazoning with a branding all over it. So that's the Kudoke British heritage. The first Ophion, if I am not mistaken. Tell us a little about this one.
So the Ophion Gilt Spectre, again, my friend Amar Singh came back into play. we decided to try to create the most incredible value for money proposition in watchmaking. That was a big ambition we had. So we tried to create a watch that speaks everything about crafting, about the tradition of watchmaking, that offers all the geeky details that us, watch lovers and collectors love about. So multi-layer dial, very well worked in details, case, finished, very good finishing of the movement, manual winding, unobstructed view on the case back, in a watch that at the time was retailed at £3,200 at the time. And we managed to get all of that with a Voutilainen Cattin case that you can see there, that is actually microblasted. And it's very, compared to the Sartory Billard we saw before, it's even more curvaceous and even more harmonious and even more subtle and gentle on the skin, if you like. A dial that speaks for itself, where we play with the contrast between the grey, kind of fairly luminescent grey of the dial with the applied indices and chattering. And at the end we were really happy with it. We made 40 pieces at the time, they were all sold, and as it happened to become then a habit as we go along, I managed to keep the prototype, the initial prototype, for myself, and this is another one I genuinely wear very often.
I think that's another buzzword for me in relation to independent watches, is value. Because the proposition from some of these brands, and I don't mean they have to be cheap to be value. Even some incredibly expensive independent watches are also representing serious value, because the vast majority of the money that you're paying is for the engineering. They're either in very low numbers, or the individual is incredibly sought after, and so that's just another area that to me just really attracts me to the field, because it's going into the craftsmanship and the workmanship. When I first saw this, and Pietro told me the price, I think I almost fell off my chair. It's unbelievable. The quality and execution, the pebble-shaped lugs I absolutely love. And everyone tells you that to work with all of these materials is really difficult, and it is. So to have all of these features at that price point is remarkable.
Yeah, and we love our obviously high-end horologerie pieces, but as I was telling my personal story, I do value for money, because my personal story is a story of relatively realistic kind of family wealth. That's when it came about talking about acquiring a watch, it had to be done with a certain care, with a certain realism. And so when I see that sometimes it's not a compromise to actually go for a watch that is attainable because it can have this level of details, I think it can be pretty surprising.
And I think, hopefully I won't overstep the mark here, but to a certain extent, I think culture today tends to move away from permanence. There's a want and a need to have things now, straight away. Whereas when you listen to Pietro's story, every single one of these, which resonates with me massively, because I totally agree with how watches should be collected, and that is they are to represent certain parts of your life or experiences or achievements, and they mark that period and they mark that specific time. So I think
some people collect for investment. Some people collect for collecting, and some people collect for just pleasure. I like to think that I do collect if something is meaningful to me. So if there is a story that resonates with me, that's my kind of leitmotif in the middle. Yeah.
So I mentioned that there are a couple of watches in particular that I identify most with Pietro out of all of these. This one is probably the piece that I identify most with him. He was wearing it, he may not necessarily remember this, but he was wearing it one of the first times that Pietro and I met. We met to discuss ultimately what would become the watch collector and my involvement with the limited edition. We met at St Pancras, we had a coffee, and we had a really good chat, and this was the piece that he was wearing. Tell us about this.
The Roma Synergy collaboration with Kari Voutilainen, and this was the limited edition's special version with a terracotta dial. Of course, I'm Italian. I've moved from Italy a long time ago, but I still feel fully attached to my origins. And when it came about, do you remember? Like we were mentioning about how purple became popular in watches, and then there was a big wave for salmon. So I had thought of creating a contrast between a grey anthracite, kind of lighter, a bit lighter than anthracite grey chapter ring, and a salmon-like inner dial. But I didn't want to do salmon because everyone was doing salmon at the time. So with Schwartz Etienne, we worked out, and ultimately with Kari Voutilainen, who made the dial, we worked out a color that is actually more like argilla terracotta, and it turned out to be incredible. So it's, when we're talking high end, for me, a dress watch. I'm not known for wearing plain classic traditional watches. This is as dressy as it would get for me, and this is a color combination that makes me smile every time I wear it. And of course the work from Kari Voutilainen at the back. Actually, this is one of the few, to my knowledge, is the only collaboration by Kari that is actually signed by him at the back. So I may say something not totally correct here, so just put a comment if you if you disagree with that. But this is one where Kari actually has signed the plate of the movement at the back. So, and again, in-house manufactured micro rotor movement. So we're going a little bit to the next level here. With the finishing by Kari Voutilainen and work by Voutilainen and Cattin for the execution of the dial. So there's a lot of horological content there, and this was a piece that we did really well with. So yeah, I would wear it in semi-formal occasions, let's put it like that.
Now the color combination is amazing, and I'm a massive fan of Schwartz Etienne movements. Even going to the micro branch, you call them Atelier de Chronometrie, you'll find them in there, which is a dive watch, one of the very few dive watches that has an open sapphire case back, while still retaining very deep water diving tolerances. So the execution, again, that understanding of when to use a partner. Whether it's Voutilainen, whether it's Schwartz Etienne, but we're using the inspiration of the terracotta. In my view, was genius. When I first saw this, it took me by surprise because I'd never heard of James Lamb.
Yes. Yeah.
And when Pietro started telling me the story, that's when I realised actually that if I hadn't before, that I think he had really cottoned on to something special with the limited edition, and that it really is, if I may say, about finding, the next artisan, the next manufacturer who's creating something special that no one's heard about.
It's really it symbolizes what we stand for at the limited edition, I think, in the following way. When we started the limited edition, we thought if we do a good job enough with some of the artisan brands, then we have some chances that the bigger brands, at the time we couldn't have access to, say, MB&F or De Bethune or Moser, some of the bigger independents. So we were thinking, if we do well with the smaller ones, we may impress the bigger independents and kind of attract them to us. But actually, we progressively understood that the beauty of what we were doing was in the scouting, in finding the unknown rather than chasing what was already known. So then, as we found talent like Ophion, we found talent like Kudoke, we also found talent in the UK with James Lamb. James Lamb, very simply, is one of the very, very few watchmakers that would make his cases by hand in the artisan way, as well as all the dials as well. So We worked here on a limited edition of only 12 pieces with Collective Horology in California, our friends, Asher and Gabe, and we have worked on a 3D dial that is completely handcrafted and is cut and then is covered by enamel. A nightmare kind of work, because you can imagine when you apply enamel on steep surfaces, the liquid tends to actually flow down naturally. So it was really a labor of love to find the right balance to keep the enamel very, very harmoniously proportioned and spread out across the dial. The off-centered inner dial is in ceramic, and I think this is as special as artisan watchmaking can be. Again, at a very great value proposition, because you are here in and around the £7,000, and with a completely different feeling on the wrist. I'm wearing another one today, which was one of the first editions that James launched, the Origin Blue, and it feels different. It's Argentium, it's malleable, it's warmer, and it's simply very interesting because nobody does this. So I was very happy to be instrumental to kind of getting James Lamb to be known in the collectors community.
And Pietro's absolutely right to mention about hand making, hand beating the cases. There genuinely are not that many manufacturers out there. There is one other, if I may mention, Cedric Jona, and there is going to be a very special piece that comes out with Cedric in the not too distant future. I think that's all I can say about it at the time. And
that's fair play, because there's not a Cedric Jona here yet.
Yes. But another reason why, I think what Pietro has created is so powerful is the access to these manufacturers, the artisans. I got to meet, thanks to Pietro, Cedric, just a few days ago in Geneva. Such a lovely man. And to think that, he sits there and he shapes every single one of those cases by hand himself. Just when you know that, then to me it automatically brings value and an understanding of the sheer labor of love that these pieces are.
When you see them working on movements, if like me, I am fascinated by the architecture of the movements, so how mechanics can be spectacular, but do I fully understand the level of complexity of the mechanics? Sometimes no, it goes beyond me. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a watchmaker, but I really get impressed with the look. But then when you see somebody working on a case, hammering a case, it brings back that very simple concept of artisan work that is impossible not to grasp. However, there's only a couple of watchmakers still doing that.
The very first video that Pietro and I did, just over 2.5 years ago, something like that, when we first embarked on the journey of the watch collector, was in relation to this watch. And yet again, my brain works in this way. I just identify certain times, certain moments with timepieces. Tell us about this.
So one of the best for me watchmaker / designers is Marco Borracino, who I was lucky to meet in my early days when I was working for Richmond. Marco was the head designer of Panerai at the time. He was killing it, of course, early 2000s with Panerai. Panerai was the watch to have. And when Marco moved away and he decided to start his own company, Singer, together with Dickinson, actually the owner of Singer Porsche Design, for me it was a no-brainer. So I was a massive admirer of the brand from day one. And when Marco and I talked and decided to do something together, it all came about a minimalistic Italian take on watch aesthetics. We very simply decided to work on the maximum contrast we could have eventually created on a dial for a driving watch. driving watch that actually, if I'm completely honest, I would use more for its function of measuring the 24 seconds in a basketball offensive motion actually. But yes, the idea was to have a dial that contrasted with the orange could give you at a glance immediately perfect visibility and perfect readability. Marco did the rest in terms of the design, and we were very proud to present this in 10 pieces back in the day. This is the flight track On the Road. And On the Road came from one of the first books I've ever read was On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and is one of the books that really ignited my interest in having the ambition of being free in life in many ways. But for the matter of this watch, we called it On the Road because this should be the perfect watch that you would wear, driving your car towards freedom on the road and being able to read the time any given time in a perfect way, a little bit like the watch you
I was about to say, which one's better? But exactly the same colorway, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope if you don't mind me saying, there are so many fans of Singer. I think I totally agree with Pietro. The fluidity of their case design is stunning. My personal favorites are actually when they keep it uncluttered. And that's one of the reasons why I really love the design, the dial design of this, and their brand new release of the Caballero, which is insightful because of the 4 rubies on the dial, but on top of that, it is just so clean, just like this is, and it just lets the design speak for itself. Yeah. You look at the way that the bezel is there, but it's not there. It's stepped out, but it still feels like it flows with the flanks of the case. You've got the satin striations across the flanks. You've got the anglage around the outside. You've got the polished bezel, slightly domed sapphire crystal. The design is just superb.
Yeah. I mean, Marco, for me, there are some, for example, in music, some bands that whatever they do, I will like. One of them is Red Hot Chili Peppers, for example. And Marco, for me, is my design Red Hot Chili Peppers. Whatever he does, I really struggle saying I don't like it because I really get his language.
When this was released, it came out of left field. My initial reaction, totally honestly, was I didn't get it. Pietro, talk to us about this watch.
So there are artistic waves that are followed by disciples that make them immortal. And I thought I grasped that kind of dynamic when I saw 14 years long collaborator to François-Paul Journe, Vladimir Negot, setting up his own business. After calling his own son François-Paul, he then went on to create a watch brand that he called Atelier Haute Complication, with a kind of a Journesque school aesthetic, but reinterpreted his own way. So I felt, again, this was a hidden gem that was deserving to be found and to be explained. And I'm really happy that like it happened with James Lamb and it happened with Ophion, we were early enough to grasp the story before it became too big. And here we go. This was the dual time. The first piece is basically, as the word says, a dual time where you can set your home time and your traveling time. There is a day and night indication, and there is a lovely movement in German silver that is actually now developed. And I was lucky enough to be able to secure one of the pieces of the 19 first ever pieces produced. So that was a subscription that was created, and number 13 was allocated to me. Why 13? Because again, I'm Italian, and 13 only in Italy is a lucky number.
Is that right?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. In Italy, 17 is not a good one. So, for example, famously, Alitalia flights would never have a 17 row. for instance. Yeah, Alitalia not there anymore,
Right.
so
I was
it's
about to
probably
say.
not a great example. But yeah, so 13 was allocated to me. Nobody wanted it. I was very happy to have it. So
That's amazing.
yeah. There is another piece as well that Vladimir has been so kind to create for me with a special dial that I am actually now waiting for. There is still a different version of the dual time with a different dial, and I'll be able to showcase that soon, I hope. Yeah.
And if that doesn't go to show that is all of our opinions are so subjective, because as I said, when I first saw this, I didn't get it. The more time you spend with the piece, you start to understand the design cues. There are some people, for example, that have criticized Vladimir for adding jaune design cues within the watch, where it's the screws on the front of the dial. In my view, actually, it's now a much more harmonious design than I ever thought it was. It works, and what a nod to your mentor to bring those elements into your piece while still making it completely your own.
If we accept as well that, of course, watchmaking is a form of art. If you study into the Leonardo school of art, or Caravaggio, or you name it, those were not just one guy doing his thing. It was one guy working with his disciples, and once the main guy would move on or obviously pass away, then the disciples will keep that particular school of thought or school of art alive. So it's how it actually works in the world of watchmaking. For as long as you said it, everyone brings his own contribution to the table, of course.
And their creativity and their all interpretation of what their piece should look like. I watched an interview with Laurent Ferrier. He was talking about the launch of his original tourbillon in 2010, following the founding of the company in 2009. And he thought that in his vision, he had created his perfect watch. It's not for everybody, although of course, you all know that I'm a massive fan of Laurent Ferrier, but that was his vision. And that's really what anyone can ever do, is create what you think is how you want it to look.
Absolutely.
This one is, if I may say, so clean, beautiful execution. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, this made me really proud, and because when I said with the limited edition we really try not to have any boundaries. Swedish watchmaking is something that is definitely not really known, and there is a lovely gentleman called Patrick Ziogren, lives in Sweden, and he creates great timepieces that are actually inspired by the Viking tradition of Viking crafts within Sweden. So he's famous for his Damascus steel, of course, patterns. Here you see it applied on the bezel. He's famous for his 3D cases. Here you see a beautiful example, and work on dials. This dial is actually made of mother of pearl, and mother of pearl is actually coated of lumen behind, so as you just showcased, with this beautiful sapphire chapter ring, internal sapphire chapter ring that gives depth, and it gives really a lively kind of effect. This was a limited edition of that we just launched, called Sky's the Limit, because the dial is supposed to symbolize the sky, and it does in a great way. And Sky's the Limit is a bit of a motto for the limited edition, since when we understood that actually our reason to exist, our reason to thrive, was about scouting the new stories, scouting the new watchmakers, digging deep, as opposed to just try to have a business focused on the mainstream, if you like. And so, yeah, this piece is symbolic to me. So.
And there are plenty of watches out there that promise with a tagline or a motto or whatever that they have some sort of affinity with perhaps something that is somewhat ethereal. This really does look like the sky above a Swedish national park. That was the inspiration when Patrick and Pietro came up with the concept. And if you whether it's in the dark or whether it's in the light, the way that you get the real definition across the mother of pearl, it looks like you're staring at a cloudy sky, with sun, blue, just you can lose yourself in that dial. And again, the minimalism combined with those design cues, you just know, with the Damascus steel, with the clean hands, it's instantly GOS. And in fact, actually, the first time I ever came across GOS was with Pietro. Back at, we went to a London show, I would say 2017 or something like that.
The Watchmakers Club.
The Watchmakers Club
event, yeah.
That's right.
It was organized by David of Garrick at the time, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
That was the first time I came across GOS, and we got to meet Patrick, and just one of those real gentlemen of watchmaking. 3 to go.
Yes, I think on the two that we see here, we're going to the 2 different spectrums. So we said before, I love value for money, serious propositions. In terms of vintage looking traditional chronographs, I dare anyone challenge the Lebu heritage, which I wear very, very often. Stupendously comfortable. It's a daily watch that you can kind of, use without thinking too much. Sturdy, robust as a timepiece would be from the time when timepieces were tools to read the time. And this is a great reinterpretation of a classic at an incredible price, because I think I paid 2,000 for this one, with a lovely column wheel chronograph by La Jouperet. Very good execution of the dial, and so many details that makes you think you're actually wearing a 15K watch. So this is also a daily wearer, besides obviously interchanging with some of the other ones.
I couldn't agree more. Whenever I've picked up a Lebu, I've always been astounded by the value proposition they provide. And without trying to blow things out of proportion, when I look at it, it gives me all the feel of a Grand Complication Patek in terms of the shape of the pushers, the shape of the case, the way that you've got the Arabic numerals. But it reminds me in particular of the 5270p, which you can look up that particular reference. That's genuinely what it reminds me of. But of course, at around 5% of the price or something along those lines.
Yeah, when you have kids, for example, and they turn 16, 17, 18, these are the pieces that, when I go back to the story with my dad, you want them to be exposed to, because they are great value, still important watches when you're at that age, but watches that you can wear and you can treasure at the same time. And then on the other side of the spectrum, of course, there is a piece that when Czapek was relaunched, it was mayhem, Oliver, you remember. It was the time when you couldn't obtain a Patek Nautilus or a Royal Oak, not even if you went crying to the retailers. And there were brands like Czapek, like Parmigiani, some others that actually got the timing absolutely right, and they came up with some propositions on the minimalistic and less minimalistic side. This is slightly a less minimalistic side because it's a Rattrapant, is the famous Rattrapant by Czapek in the Antarctic case. And this was the first edition, but not only that, because Xavier became a good friend of ours, and me personally, somebody I go to when I need to share ideas and I need to kind of just have a wise advice at times and a laugh, sometimes just a laugh. They made a prototype for us and for me, which is this one that you see here, which I don't wear very often because, in all honesty, I'm not the biggest fan of steel bracelets. But on this one, I really insisted that if there was going to be an exception, I really wanted to be this one. And I was so happy with the choice, and so happy that Xavier could make it happen, because when this came available to me, the whole of the series was already sold out, and it was, if I'm not wrong, 40 pieces at the time. So very, very grateful and very happy, because if you look at it, it's really the only complicated timepiece in my collection, and that is sober in many ways, When I decided to push a little bit the envelope, I thought this was very fitting.
Well, if you're going to push it, then you push it with the skeletonized rattrapant. So, again, some of you may know I'm a massive fan of Czapek, and was very fortunate to get to sit with Xavier and chew the fat at Watches and Wonders earlier this year. I think probably we both agree that what they've done over the last 10 years, as limited edition has grown, so has Czapek, but that vision of Xavier right at the beginning, in the way that he started the company and founding and funding it, just speaks to, again, that kind of creative entrepreneurial spirit that
sky is the limit. Again, when we launched the Antarctic together, they were making 110 pieces per year, and then now they are 3,000 pieces per year. So whether that's good or bad, it's up to everyone's different judgment, but you cannot not admire the achievement. And the fact that the intentions were really good, were to make available a certain kind of horologerie to people that were not in the top books of the retailers that were monopolizing the items that everybody wanted. So kudos to Xavier and to Czapek.
And this isn't a forum to start talking about what other brands do or don't do. I think it's really important that we emphasize that although, of course, Czapek has now become a high street brand, there aren't really any high street brands here, but you cannot take away what they have done for the industry. These brands wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all those high street brands that can now really pick and choose who's able and lucky enough to buy their watches. They are incredible in their own right, but hopefully what we're demonstrating here, and perhaps by the one very special piece that we've still got to reveal, demonstrates that there's never been a stronger time for independent watches.
If I can say why I don't have a mainstream really piece in my collection is just because, having been part of the big groups for a long time and having seen how things were developing, the high street concept is what I think has become incompatible with artisan watchmaking. I'm into artisan watchmaking, and that's why I put my life into developing the limited edition, specializing in artisan watchmaking. The mainstream brands make great products. It's on the distribution that I've always had a problem with. The fact that the product is sometimes made to fill the shelves of every single high street boutique all over the world, which is not necessarily, to my very humble opinion, where the reasoning about creating a brand or creating a product should lay when we talk about a product that means so much to people. That was always our standpoint, and that's the reason why I respect Rolex, but I won't have a Rolex in my collection. I respect many other brands, but they won't be my particular collection, without any judgment from my part, of course.
Well, that's a perfect segue, thank you. There's one brand that I think, I don't think you will ever find sat waiting in a shop window. And that is with Pietro's first and foremost. And now we're very lucky to say at the limited edition, very good and dear friend, Vianney Halter. Now this piece has to be kept to one side because it is
This is not part of my collection yet.
It's not actually part of the collection, but I couldn't resist. I love it so much that I could not resist.
Is the next to come?
Bringing it into the interview for Pietro to give us the inspiration behind this piece. This is a prototype. It has not been launched at this time of making this video, but irrespective, Pietro, tell us about this masterpiece.
It's got my name on it, but it's not technically yet in my collection, of course. When we started the limited edition, as I just said, for me, these artisans watchmakers that nobody knew anything about, if it wasn't for maybe the work, obviously, of Max Busser with the Opus Saga, Harry Winston, for example, or the few of us that would know about the AHCI, nobody knew about Vianney Halter. Well, I knew about him, and I knew he was a genius, and I knew he was a great, great guy. And I think he's is one of those artists that epitomizes why watches are so important to us, to an extent that goes well beyond what watches are for and how they look or how they are made even. So for me to celebrate our 10th anniversary with my hero, you know, in watchmaking terms, making a watch for the limited edition is the peak, I think, of what we have managed to achieve. So we have decided to create a very rare version in titanium of the classic, in collaboration again with our friend Amr Cindy, also known as the Horophile. And Amr designed, and I had the pleasure to curate the creation of a piece that again plays with our own colors: anthracite grey, black, gold. It's a little bit the color code, the color mood of the limited edition, but in a very meaningful way, again to create contrast on a piece that there have already been a few versions of the classic. It's not easy to have the ambition to very humbly add something to what was already done, and I think this piece does in so many ways. When we saw it the first time, we were smiling, and we knew we nailed it the moment we saw it in the flesh, because obviously the render that you see on the cover of the book kind of gives an idea, but the piece, it's just different level. So I need to work hard, make sure that this will be the top piece that will sit in my collection if I'm lucky enough one day.
You mean stop wasting time making videos with me and go do some work. But exactly. So just to put this into context, the original classic was released in 2000. Production stopped at around 250 units, and that was across only the precious metal sphere. And production stopped in 2010. So it really took something really quite special to bring it out of the library 15 years later, but also to give it that identity, stay faithful and truthful to the design, which this has, but really stamp your own creativity and ideology onto it. And just, if you look at all the individual elements, you think, oh, I'm not quite sure whether that works. But even down to the polished englaze around the bezel, the 12, 18 karat gold rivets in the bezel, the same rivets in the crown, the fact you even have the same rivets where the lugs are, the depth of the dial, the way that the center is recessed, the pen-like nib hands. It actually, as you're reeling off all these different design cues, you think it's actually going to be too much, because some watches just are a bit too much on the eye, but it's so congruent in the way that it's done.
That's the secret. I think I love the way you just put it down, because sometimes independent watchmaking, like art, doesn't make any rational sense when you try to explain it, and then all of a sudden it materializes in front of you. You know what? A couple of people told me when I was thinking about setting up the limited edition, they told me the maths don't work. The idea doesn't work at all. So in that sense, it was like an artisan creation whereby, yeah, you can try to explain it, but it's when you actually make it that then it makes the sense that you want to give to it.
Yeah, no, I honestly, and one last element of this piece, as I mentioned, 250 of the original classics made. There'll be just 20 of these, which again, in of itself goes back to that question of value. This is not about trying to milk a special piece. This is...
We could have done 50, could have done 70 for sure.
But the idea that, you know, this is, as I said, a faithful but very personal representation and revival of one of an iconic maker's catalogue, I think is very special and just an amazing way to mark 10 years of the limited edition. So, you know, when everyone's son has a birthday, they always say, well, how do you feel? How do you feel?
Ooh, how do I feel? I think the word is grateful. I feel grateful and I feel elated, because it is true that as far as the limited edition is concerned, and there are much more important issues to worry about in life, and than watch collecting or artisan watchmaking, but for what the watchmaking panorama was up until 15, 20 years when I was into the groups and what it is today, it's a completely different world where actually anyone with talent and with a plan and with an original idea can actually find a platform where it can be exposed. Now, thanks to us to a point, but to many others now that I've seen, that what drives watchmaking is the independence and not the mainstream as it used to be before. Now that's completely been flipped. I think the mainstream brands are a valid alternative to real watchmaking, which is artisan watchmaking, and not the other way around. So that's my ethos. So I feel crazy that these thoughts 10 years ago sounded kind of not unacceptable, but very, very, it sounded like a stretch. Whereas today it's the obvious that is in front of everyone. And grateful to the watchmakers, grateful to the collectors like yourself, that you have epitomized that journey actually, from appreciating watchmaking in general and then accepting and embracing to go deeper and find out things that would put you in an uncomfortable position of having to actually make judgment or make or criticize. And you have embraced that journey, and I think that's where the fun of collecting happens, as opposed to having a circle of friends where everyone has to have the same thing to actually feel reassured. I don't think the fun is there. So if with the limitation we manage to grasp a tiny bit of that and facilitate a tiny bit of this way of thinking, then it makes me feel very, very proud.
I think it's safe to say that the Limited Edition has created an amazing platform for independent watches. As we've mentioned, we've taken, I say a whistle-stop tour, actually. We've spent a little longer than originally anticipated, but that's in absolutely no bad thing. It's been amazing to explore it with you. And I think it just comes down to me to say, I guess, Pietro, thank you for joining me. Honestly, what a pleasure, what a privilege. Thanks for bringing all these pieces in.
Next time we do your collection.
Next time we do my collection. But honestly, I guess the only other thank you now is genuinely to you, because I really got involved 2 years or so ago. Pietro's been doing this for 10 years, and if it wasn't for you guys out there coming, believing in the project, believing in the independence, believing in the limited edition's ability to deliver, and the integrity with which, actually, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, Pietro and the team deliver that, attending our events, which honestly we're so proud as to how they turn out each and every time, and genuinely that's because of all you guys who attend and the support you give. And lastly, we never thought that when we started the journey, starting the limited edition channel on YouTube, that would be anywhere near 200,000 subscribers. And the fact that we're over that now in just over 2 years blows my mind. It really does. And it's amazing to have been on the journey. We're incredibly humbled by it all. Thank you. But it was all started by this man. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling on. Thank you so much for joining. We hope you've enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure to have Pietro join us on a much longer and different Watch Collector episode. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Oliver, for the love you put in everything, for your incommensurable support and contribution. And thanks to the people behind the scene as well. Chris, Sam, masterminding everything that you don't see on the camera, but that actually make all of this happen to an extent where sometimes Oliver and I struggle to how can I say, we get really surprised by the professionalism and the quality of the work that is actually churned out after we talk in these episodes. So thanks everyone.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks guys. We'll see you next time.